Do you remember the exact moment you grew up? Stop seeing the world through the eyes of a child when reality set in. The moment the world stopped being so colourful, when everything became dull, and when you couldn't go back. I like to call this the second coming of consciousness. A lot of people seem to remember the exact moment they woke up, they became conscious, but what a lot of people don't seem to remember is when that consciousness met our good friend, reality. I have a problem that you share, whether you think so or not, and it's nothing to do with climate change, the threat of global war, even politics. The problem is the fact that as a species, we are the most chronically unhappy we have ever been in human history. Over 300 million people internationally suffer with depression. That's almost the entire population of the United States. You strive your entire life to be happy. You think that when you earn a certain amount of money, you'll be happy. When you find a certain partner and have kids and a family and settle down, you'll be happy. When you have a good group of friends around you, you'll be happy, but in reality, it's never enough. It never works. Wouldn't it be great if you could go back in time and live the world like you did as a kid? See the colour in the world again. Get excited about every single birthday. Get rid of all the stress for a day and see that smile in the mirror again. Well, that's a shame, isn't it? Because you can't, but you can get damn well close. You're always going to have stresses and issues in your life. That's just a part of what makes us human. But kids have stresses. They may seem completely insignificant to us, mind you, but in their heads, it's the end of the world. What if they fall into quicksand and die? They'll never get to eat their dino nuggies ever again. Yet they're still happy 99% of the time. And that has to do with something that we lose when we pass this reality threshold, this second coming of consciousness, and that is wonder. Why is the sky blue? Is water wet? What's that strange man doing in the car park? Kids ask a lot of questions that we now know the answers to, but that's because we asked them as kids. That is wonder. We found it fascinating when our parents told us that light could be a whole bunch of different colours. What light even was, for example. Throw that egg on the floor, see what happens. Why does it do that? How can I even see the stars when they're supposedly that far away? There's just nothing that comes close to the level of awe that we felt back then, thinking we were uncovering the mysteries of the world. Yet for some reason, after we passed this threshold, we just stopped, like we outgrew it or something. We stopped asking questions, and to be honest, no one really knows why. I think it's a mixture of a lot of things, really. Maybe you arrogantly thought that there was no more questions left to ask in the world. Spoiler alert, there is. Maybe it just got too hard for you to comprehend, so you just stopped trying altogether. Maybe you think that there's not enough time left in your adult life to leave space to ask these questions. Well, whatever reason that you're giving yourself right now, that's okay. A great part of being a human is that we like to think we have everything figured out. We like to think that there's no more room left in our heads. We have a job, we have a relationship to balance, we have friends and family to see, we have passions we want to fulfill, and we have basic needs of eating, sleeping, drinking. So you look at that and you go, there's just no more space left for wonder. But you've made it this far into the video, so that tells me that you're ready for a change in perspective. What if I told you that it's possible to have all these things going on, and just with a little change in your perspective, with a little change in the way that you approach life, there's always enough space to find true happiness, to find a little bit of wonder. I want to take you on a journey with me, an exercise, if you will, and I'm just going to warn you now, it's going to get very, very confusing, but that's the point. I want you to try and keep up as hard as you can with what I'm saying, but there is no pressure at all. If you get lost or confused, that's actually a good thing, but you'll find out why that is at the end. We are not children anymore. Our brains can handle extremely complex thoughts, and if you think that you can't, just know you absolutely can. All of our brains are capable of the exact same thing. For some people, it just takes a little bit longer or maybe even shorter to understand things. Some people have to put in more work That is all. One more very important thing before we start this though, and it's to do with a certain misconception that people like to say, which quite frankly makes me quite upset. If you keep asking questions, you're always going to come up with the Big Bang or God as the reason for it. But just for this exercise, accept the fact that this is not the case. Let your mind work freely. No restrictions, no endpoint, no preconceptions, just straight up thoughts. So let's start with this question I'm going to give you. And the aim is to try and come up with as many questions and answers from this one start point as physically possible. So let's begin. What is real? Like, define real. It's something that is true, something we know exists for sure. But how do we know that? Well, it has something to do with our senses. Our senses take in data from our hearing, from our sight, from our smell, and it feeds that to the brain, and then we make the judgment if it's real or not. But how does the brain do that? Well, we actually don't know. So there's actually nothing to say that we perceive the same thing. This is the McDonald's sound. We've all heard it before, but while you might hear this, I might hear this. And you might say, that's ridiculous, but prove me wrong. Sound, in reality, is just waves. That's all it is. It's the exact same data, but when that goes into two separate brains, they might do completely different things with them. So while we might both know this specific sound wave as the McDonald's sound, we might actually be hearing two completely different things. So which is the real one? Well, I mean, let's go deeper. You perceive things as yourself. So I mean, you can say you're real because you're you. But in reality, what are you? Are you your body? Well, if you cut your arm off, are you then two completely separate beings? Obviously no. So I don't know, maybe your brain or your consciousness that sits inside of your brain, or maybe you're a soul. But what on earth is a soul? Why do we even think this deep to begin with? What is the point? Well, we do it to try and rationalize this ridiculous world around us, because if we didn't, all we'd do is feel small, insignificant, and useless. We need purpose, so we came up with this crazy thing called maths to try and explain everything around us, and it works really well. Surprisingly well. We created maths, but this human creation seems to perfectly describe a world that we didn't create. How? For instance, this is something called the Mandelbrot set. It is something called a fractal, which is a very complex mathematical structure described by a very simple mathematical equation. You start with a number and you keep plugging it into the equation over and over and over again to see if the number gets closer to infinity or if it stays within certain limits, like 2 and 3, for example. What makes it weird is that when you graph it out, it produces a shape that is so intricate and infinitely detailed. If you zoom in on any of the edges, what you'll find is that it repeats itself over and over and over again. What's even crazier though is the fact that these patterns that a simple maths equation make seem to mimic nature. I'm talking clouds, mountain ranges, coastlines, trees. It gets to the point where all of these things that we see in nature can be fully explained using fractal mathematics, which brings up the question, did we actually create maths? Or was maths already hard-coded into the universe to begin with? It's all already there. Did we just figure it out? Because if we didn't make it, then someone has to have. It's all so perfectly crafted to the point where absolutely nothing is uncertain. So there has to be an intelligent designer. Aliens. They created a simulation, our entire universe that we live inside of, and it's living on one of those massive supercomputers that they have in their spaceships. They created all of this beautiful nature for us to enjoy, but if that's the case, then why are you so damn ugly? And why is that person so beautiful? That's because you aren't the main character in this simulation. Or maybe you are and you're supposed to be ugly for like character development or something. You know you're real. maybe, but can you prove that this consciousness, this feeling of emotion, these thoughts exist in everyone else around you? Just look at someone else for a second. How do you know they're not just a husk created by this simulation in order to serve as a side character in your life? Or perhaps this level of consciousness that you think you have is completely fabricated and you have no free will whatsoever. You're just there to serve the purpose of the main character in the simulation, the attractive one. So you're the robot, not them. Think about it. You're not the same person you were when I started this sentence, or then, or then, or then. You only exist in the absolute present. What even is then, though? How do we know that time is moving forward and it's not moving backwards? You cannot prove to me that any versions of yourself before this in the past ever existed. You can't prove to me that you didn't just pop into existence right now with all of your memories preloaded into your brain. Speaking of memories, some people think in different languages, some in English or Spanish. What if this language that we think with is limiting our brain? What if the way we perceive the world is being capped by our mental language? What if there's a language out there that has the words to describe everything from the meaning of life to all the scientific discoveries that we haven't discovered yet? That self-dialogue though, that person speaking in your head, some people have it, some people don't. Some people, when they imagine an image, for example, can see it very clearly. Some people only see vague shapes, some people see nothing at all. Which one of these are you? That's a fucking superpower, by the way. Or maybe the way that you see it is the only way it can possibly be seen, and all these other people telling you they see it differently are actually just created by the simulation in order to make you feel important. Or maybe the aliens that created this simulation are having the exact same problem, so they created us in order for us to solve it for them. Or maybe we can't solve it for them because that cleverly engineered math they gave us just doesn't have the capabilities. So there are problems we may never solve for these creators, who will never solve it for their creators, who will never solve it for their creators. Do all of these mini universes all exist on the same timeline, or does time even exist at all? Is anything real? Or maybe we do all hear the same McDonald's sound. I don't know. How was that? Are you confused yet? Hopefully so, because if you understand all that, you've got a Nobel Prize waiting for you, honestly. That was a lot of information, so let's just take a breather real quick. Let your mind just rest for 2 seconds. Here's the point of all of this, though. You weren't supposed to find the answers to all of those problems. And that's because you don't get that sense of awe, that sense of wonder from the answers, you get them from the questions. That sense of mystery, the new, the unknown to us, creates a sense of curiosity in our brain. And that curiosity is enough for our brains to release something called dopamine. Dopamine, if you don't know, is just a hormone that's released into the bloodstream to give us a sense of satisfaction or fulfillment. It's like a reward system our brain has for doing things that make it happy, basically. It basically defines everything that we do in life. Everything we do is to try and get the brain to release more of this happy hormone. But it's not just curiosity that releases this hormone into the bloodstream. It's also the anticipation of maybe finding an answer to one of these ridiculous questions. In short, our bodies react so well to things that we don't know unless it stresses you out. This is why I made such an emphasis on the fact that if you got lost during all that or you got confused, it doesn't matter, because letting your mind wander completely free of any self-inflicted consequence is the key to getting this childlike wonder back. Kids don't have a consequence for understanding why the sky is blue. They don't need to understand it. They just asked the question because it's the first thing that came to mind when they looked at the sky. The asking of the question is 10 times more important than finding the answer. That's what gives you the dopamine release. That's what gives you this childlike joy inside of you. This is also why learning has been hated by so many people for so long. The first time we properly learned was in schools, where if you don't understand something or you fail on a test like so, you are stressed out. You need to get these grades to secure a good job so then you can financially support yourself, have a family, and enjoy life. It was all tied to the fact you had to know these things. Here's a little tip from me to you, the real takeaway of this video. Learning is the key to happiness. It's something that we deep down all truly love. It connects us all, whether you like it or not. And I hate the fact that it's been butchered by years and years and years of people telling us we need to be right all of the time. And that's actually my key aim with this channel. I want people to understand that deep down, learning is what we all love. It's what we all enjoy doing. Take some time right now to think about something you're really, really interested in. And then just go and learn one new thing about it. Just one new thing. And that's today's homework. No marks, no pressure, no nothing. The document is linked down below as always. I am genuinely interested in all of these responses because I'm going to be learning something new as well. It's a win-win situation. This is how you achieve happiness, joy, purpose. That kid you remember is still locked away up there. He's just behind the really, really heavy door of modern day stress. And after you're done filling that out, you can watch this video I made on original thoughts. How to fill your head with more original ideas than you could ever possibly imagine. But that being said, I hope you learned something today, guys. Let's keep it going.